What exactly is reality? We are all experiencing something right now, but is it truly real? Could everything we see, everything we experience, everything in existence be artificial? This isn't just a philosophical musing, but a concept that's been explored seriously by thinkers, scientists, and tech moguls alike. The Art Simulation Hypothesis suggests that we may very well be living in a simulated reality, and believe it or not, the evidence seems to be building in favor of this idea. The concept of the universe being an artificial construct is not new. The idea of simulated realities and artificial worlds dates back through many ancient cultures. However, the modern form of this hypothesis came from the work of philosopher Nick Bostrom at Oxford University in 2003. In his influential paper, Bostrom introduced what he calls the pure simulation trilemma, which presents a mind-bending possibility. One of three things must be true. 1. Humanity destroys itself before we have the technology to create convincing simulations of reality. 2. We don't have the ability to create simulations, but choose not to. 3. We are already living in a simulation. Bostrom argues that each of these possibilities is equally likely, and in many ways it's not hard to see why. After all, we already use computer models to simulate everything from climate patterns to economic behavior to virtual worlds for entertainment. So it's not such a far leap to consider that, in the future, a highly advanced civilization could simulate its own reality, just like we simulate worlds in video games. In fact, when we look at the progress of technology, it becomes clear how simulations might evolve. Consider that once a civilization develops the ability to create detailed simulations of reality, the most logical step would be to simulate its own early history simulation. But why stop at one simulation? Once a civilization has the power to create such simulations, it would likely create many. Those simulated civilizations might then create their own simulated worlds, leading to layers of simulations, each one nested inside the other. It's like a cosmic version of Russian dolls, each one a more intricate simulation than the last. Imagine for a second that you're a character in one of those simulated worlds. You believe you have free will. You think, I'll invent a computer. So you do. But once you create that computer, you use it to create a simulated world of your own. Then your simulated world creates its own simulated world. And on it goes, growing in complexity, deeper into layers of reality. When Elon Musk was asked about the probability that our reality is the original, base reality, the one true reality, he gave a staggering answer. Musk suggested that the chances were in base reality are a mere 1 in billions. Meanwhile, Neil deGrasse Tyson, one of the most prominent astrophysicists today, offers a slightly more optimistic view, saying the chances are 50-50, meaning we have a 50% chance of living in the base reality, and the other 50% chance we are part of some vast simulation. Even a 50-50 chance that everything we experience is simulated seems like a pretty high probability. But here's the thing. Simulation theory isn't scientific theory, at least not in the traditional sense. It's philosophical worse in nature, not mathematical. It doesn't fit neatly into the box of physics, which is why it's so controversial. It's a subject that blends metaphysics and speculative science, and while it's a topic of increasing interest among many scholars, we still need evidence, hard evidence, to know for sure. If we live in a simulation, then finding proof of it might be easier than we think. All we have to do is look carefully at the universe around us, the beginning of it all. Let's start from the very beginning. According to modern physics, there was once a time when there was no space and no time. All the contents of the universe were compressed into a space no larger than a tennis ball, and at a temperature hotter than anything we can imagine. Then, out of nowhere, the Big Bang happened. An explosion of unimaginable magnitude, expanding faster than the speed of light. Fast forward about 14 billion years, and we're here today with galaxies, planets, and, in our case, things like ice cream and, yes, even fur to K-pop. But here's the question. If there was no time before the Big Bang, what existed? If you ask a physicist about the state of existence before the universe, they might tell you about things like quantum foam or dark energy, which are just as strange and difficult to comprehend as the Big Bang itself. Ask a theologian, and you might get a more familiar answer: a creator or a higher power that brought everything into existence. But where was this creator before the universe? What made them decide to create it in the first place? And what about the laws of physics? How did they come into being? One way to think about it is that the universe was dormant. simply waiting to be booted up. Think about it, just like a computer program. When that program was started, all the rules of the universe, like gravity, electromagnetism, the speed of light, were set into the program. Constants like Planck's constant, which governs the speed of light, and even Avogadro's number, used to define the number of molecules in a mole, could all be part of the program's instructions. In fact, even consciousness itself could be part of the simulation. The nature of consciousness, after all, remains one of the biggest mysteries in science. What if it's not something biological or natural, but simply a feature of the program, designed to give us the illusion of self-awareness, glitches in the matrix? If we are indeed living in an artificial reality, it stands to reason that glitches might occur, small, inexplicable events that reveal cracks in the system. In fact, this idea is not so far from what Philip K. Dick, one of the most influential science fiction writers, believed. Dick, whose books like Blade Runner and Total Recall became iconic films, thought that the Mandela Effect might actually be a manifestation of glitches between parallel universes or timelines, possibly caused by the simulation failing to update itself properly. The Mandela Effect is a strange phenomenon where large groups of people remember events differently from how they actually happened. For example, millions of people believe that Nelson Mandela died in prison in the 1980s, even though he didn't, or that the popular children's book series was called the Berenstain Bears, when it was actually Berenstain Bears. These shared false memories, sometimes called misremembered collective memories, could point to a flaw in the simulation, a momentary lapse in the program that causes reality to shift, confusing us in the process. Could these shifts in memory, these discrepancies, be the result of the simulation adjusting it itself? After all, if we're living in a simulation, perhaps the program was designed to correct itself over time. Evidence hidden in the fabric of the universe. Another piece of evidence comes from Fibonacci numbers and the golden ratio note, which appear everywhere in nature. The Fibonacci sequence is a series of numbers where each number is the sum of the two preceding ones: 1, 2, 3, 5, 13, 21, 34. As it turns out, the Char golden ratio, about 1.618, emerges from this sequence and is seen in everything from the spirals of galaxies to the growth patterns of plants and even the structure of human bones. This pattern seems to be ingrained in the very fabric of the universe. Some claim this is just a coincidence, or a byproduct of how our brains are wired to look for patterns. But what if it's not a coincidence? What if it's a feature of the simulation as itself? A deliberate choice, made by the creators to ensure that everything follows a harmonious set of rules? The limits of reality. Now let's talk about the limits of reality. In a simulation, one way to conserve resources is to only render what's needed for the user. Think of a video game, where only the immediate environment is fully rendered in detail, while distant objects are left as simple geometric shapes. This kind of efficiency makes sense when it comes to rendering large, complex environments. Could the same principle be applied to the universe? Perhaps the universe is only fully real when we interact with it directly, and distant galaxies, stars, and planets are just projections brought into focus only when we observe them. This could explain why certain phenomena like quantum mechanics and the speed of light seem to behave differently when we observe them. Just like a game engine, which renders objects only when they are close to the player, our universe might only render fully when we get close enough. This might even explain why we can't see alien life, despite the vast number of planets that should be capable of supporting it. Perhaps the simulation is designed to focus only on us. Or maybe alien civilizations exist, but they remain outside of our current view.